What's going on, everybody? So today I wanted to check out the top 20 games on the Nintendo Switch 2. Now, it's been a month and I wanted to do something, so I wanted to list off all the games that I think are actually better on this portable device opposed to the Nintendo Switch 1, and also the best Nintendo Switch 2 games you could get for this handheld. And the first game is Bayonetta 3. Now, this game has seen a lot of criticism regarding its performance, but with the Nintendo Switch 2, it actually gets a good resolution and FPS bump. Now, there isn't an actual upgrade for this game per se, but you can get quite a bit of FPS and good resolution opposed to the original Nintendo Switch 1 version. Now, of course, this isn't the Nintendo Switch 2 version. I can't wait to see what that would look like at some point. So far, the natural upgrades of the Switch 2 make the FPS a smooth 60. And as you can see, the resolution actually got a bump of its own. So playing games like this that were naturally not very good on the Switch 1 don't even seem to need any kind of upgrade to the Switch 2, and that's just promising for any future iterations or future ports that will be supported for the Switch 2. I can't wait to see what Nintendo has in store for an actual upgrade to this game. And the next game on this list is one that I'm not a huge fan of, but I love the upgrade for Tears of the Kingdom to the Nintendo Switch 2. I think the resolution bump and the FPS proved to be something that this game needed. In fact, a lot of people are saying that this game has better physics because of the Nintendo Switch 2's hardware, and it makes some weapons quite overpowered. Now, as you can see, the loading time on the Switch 2 with Tears of the Kingdom is a lot better than the original, that's for sure, because this game has a lot going on. And the FPS is a smooth 60. It's quite incredible to see this kind of jump, but it actually feels like Tears of the Kingdom was made for us in the Nintendo Switch 2 version opposed to the Switch 1. But yeah, my guy is freezing right now, so I can't really play any kind of setting in this. But as you can see, Tears of the Kingdom is an unhinged, challenging experience. This is for the Breath of the Wild fans that played that expansion and beat it numerous times on higher difficulties. I think Tears of the Kingdom is still solid, and on the Switch 2, this game definitely aged very well. And the third game on the list is Batman Arkham City. Now, Batman Arkham City was one of those Xbox 360 games that I couldn't get enough of, and its port to the Nintendo Switch was something that I've been begging for almost a decade. And finally, we have the trilogy of the Batman Arkham series. And on the Switch 2, Batman Arkham City actually plays incredibly well. I think this is one of the better ports from the Xbox 360 and PS3 days because the resolution is untouched and the frame rate seems to be uncapped. So we could actually get a clean 60 in handheld mode or docked mode. I think it's docked mode, but this game still runs very smooth regardless of what FPS cap it's at. I think that Batman Arkham City is one of the better Arkham games in the series. And if you're willing to jump into the series, I think this is one of the best. And considering the gameplay and considering everything that this game has to offer, it seems like the best entry point for anybody that's considering getting into the series. Back in the day, I played this game so much. I can't get enough of Batman Arkham City, and on the Switch 2, it's actually better somehow. So that's a good thing. And the fourth game I wanted to show off is Crysis 3 Remastered. Now, Crysis 3 Remastered on the Switch 1 was incredible, I have to admit that. But on the Switch 2, the FPS seems like it's going 60, and that's something that my laptops can't even do. I think that this is actually the best version of Crysis 3, not because it looks better, but because the performance is so consistent and it's actually playable. Now, I'm stuck on a part in a ship at the very beginning of the game, like I usually am, because this game is not for the faint of heart. But in handheld mode, it seems to be locked to 30 FPS. When you dock the game is seemingly at 60. And that's something that I haven't seen ever. I think docking and playing in handheld as well, and the seamlessness of that process makes Crysis 3 for the Switch 2 in particular one of the best ports of the Crysis series. And the fifth game on the list is Fast Fusion. Now, at first, I didn't particularly like this game compared to Fast RMX, but there seems to be a quality and ultra quality mode when you dock the system. And playing Fast Fusion, it seems like the graphics are somehow the best out of anything that's available for the Nintendo Switch 2. I think that it even looks better than Cyberpunk 2077 with ultra quality mode. Now, the only kicker is the fact that the FPS dips a lot when you have it in ultra quality, but when you have it in performance like this, it goes at a smooth 60 FPS. I actually think I have the game in quality mode, but as you can see, the game looks absolutely amazing. I think the most impressive feature about this game is the motion blur. Now, the motion blur effects in a lot of Switch games have been a little off, but I think Fast Fusion really hones into that next generation look when it comes to racing games on the Nintendo Switch 2. I think that Fast Fusion is impressive, regardless of the fact that it's pretty cheap and it's not that long. But I think considering it's only $15, this game is a must-own for any Nintendo Switch 2 owner. And number 6 is none other than Hogwarts Legacy. This is one of the notorious games on the original Switch that didn't look very good due to the hardware limitations of the system. But as you can see on the Nintendo Switch 2, there are no such limitations. Hogwarts Legacy is one of the most impressive looking games on the Switch 2, and it's only been a month. I don't think any other game could look and feel as good as Hogwarts Legacy in a very long time. They did a spectacular job on this port. And on the Switch 2, Hogwarts Legacy is one of the best versions of this game, in my opinion. It's because of just how seamless it is and how convenient it is to play this game. I think that the loading times are some of the best. I think that the performance is actually very stable, even considering some PC handhelds like ROG Ally, Legion Go, Steam Deck. I think that all of those PC handhelds don't perform as well as Hogwarts Legacy on the Switch 2. And for that, it's number 6. And number 7 is Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Game Collection. Now, the Marvel vs. Capcom games are my favorite fighting games of all time since I was a single digit. I think that having this on the Switch 2 is absolutely incredible. Now, at first, this game actually wasn't available for the Switch 2 for some reason, because I guess the compatibility was a bit off. But now, only a few weeks, Nintendo actually added compatibility to this game. I feel like I'm talking about the Steam Deck, but Marvel vs. Capcom Collection is available on the Switch 2, and it is incredible. I think that this is one of the best party games or fighting games you can play for the Switch 2. This game is always a lot of fun, especially if you have a few family members or friends over and just want to play as some of your favorite characters like Iron Man, Venom, Cammy, any of the Street Fighter characters and Capcom or Marvel characters are displayed in perfect form in this fighting game. I think there's no other fighting game or game, their accuracy is unmatched in Marvel vs. Capcom 1, 2, and actually 3. But yeah, this game is amazing on the Switch 2. And speaking of fighting games, Street Fighter 6 on the Nintendo Switch 2 is also one of the better ports of this title. I think that Street Fighter 6 looks incredible, plays perfectly. It's almost as if it were made for the Nintendo Switch 2, which it was. And it's great to see something as complex as Street Fighter 6 working so optimally on a portable system like the Nintendo Switch 2. It's amazing to even play this game with a bunch of friends, and I think that this is one of the best Street Fighter games in recent memory since Third Strike. In fact, this was a sequel to Third Strike, so if you want to get back into the game and want to get into one of the better timelines of Street Fighter, then Street Fighter 6 is a good starting point, and especially on the Nintendo Switch 2. And number 9 is a game that never gets old, and that is Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. This is one of the few action games that always makes me go back to it month by month. I think that Ninja Gaiden 3 is one of the most impressive games in the series, and a lot of people think that it's not that great. I think it's also very underrated considering all of the criticism from fans. But this is a very fast action adventure game starring Ryu Hayabusa. If you haven't heard of it, Ninja Gaiden is one of the most intense action games out there, and it's just all good ninja fun. One of the most entertaining games that have to do with a ninja in our current and modern era. And with Ninja Gaiden 4 and with Ninja Gaiden 2 Black as well premiering this year and next, I think that it's a good enough time to get back into the series. I think that Ninja Gaiden 3 is one of the better games in the series because it's just the most accessible. But obviously, these games are not without the rage quit phenomenon. This is one of the hardest games you can play out there. So maybe starting with Ninja Gaiden 2 Sigma and then going to 3 Razor's Edge would be smarter, because this is one of the harder games in the series. Yeah, guys, definitely try out Ninja Gaiden 3 if you have any kind of time on your hands. It is a bloody action game, so there's that, but I do think it's one of the best action games out there, right next to God of War. And I still have a good time playing Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge, especially on the Nintendo Switch 2. For some reason, this game is just at an uncapped FPS, and it's silky smooth 60 on the Nintendo Switch 2. I think Nintendo capped it at 60, but with the original, it always dipped down and the resolution wasn't good either. But for some reason, the game always played at 40 to 45 FPS, and then sometimes it would get to 60 if the action kind of dimmed down a little bit. But for the most part on the Switch 2, the performance is perfect and the experience is unmatched between the two handhelds, and I highly recommend Ninja Gaiden 3 Razor's Edge. And number 10 is a game included in Mario 3D World, and that is Bowser's Fury. This is one of the most impressive open world Mario games since Mario Odyssey. I actually like it a bit more than Mario Odyssey, but with the Switch 2 version, it actually gets a big upgrade in terms of FPS and resolution, and even detail. I think this game looks phenomenal on the handheld. Even in handheld mode, I think the resolution is quite impressive. But this is one of the best multiplayer games I played in recent memory, and I'm counting Halo Combat Evolved. I think that this is one of the better games that Nintendo has made, especially the fact that it comes with Bowser's Fury. This is so much fun to play with a friend, your partner, your friends. Just get them all in here to play 3D World because it is quite a time. I think I put in about 100 hours in co-op mode with Mario 3D World, but Bowser's Fury is something that you can go into single player. But if you want to work with this little guy here, you could actually play 2 players in Bowser's Fury. So that's a good addition if you want some variety. But yeah, this game is not to be messed with on the Switch 2. It's one of the best in the series in terms of Super Mario games. And I think on the Switch 2, it is actually the best version. And number 11 is The House of the Dead remake. I think that House of the Dead is one of the most popular games that Sega has ever made because of its light gun shooter aspects. I think that it has an addictive kind of way of going about each stage and traveling and transitioning to different levels. I think the House of the Dead franchise is near and dear to my heart because of the way that it handles all of this light gun shooter fun. I think it's kind of like the Resident Evil of light gun shooters, not because it has zombies, but the House of the Dead 2 was actually my favorite. So going into the House of the Dead remake, I sort of was a little skeptical, but this is just as fun as the House of the Dead 2. In fact, this makes more sense to be called the House of the Dead since you are going to a giant mansion into different aspects of it like a lab, and you get to see different BOWs, pretty much very similar to Resident Evil. So if you're a big Resident Evil fan and you love light gun shooters, then the House of the Dead is for you. And on the Switch 2, it's actually stuck at a lot 60 FPS with the resolution and details looking a lot better on the screen, especially docked. I feel like docked mode really shows how much this game progressed on the Switch 2 because, as you know, the Switch 2 is more powerful in dock mode, but handheld mode is still locked to 60 FPS, and especially playing with a friend, I think this game really shows its true colors, and it's one of the better light gun shooters, as I said before. But yeah, give House of the Dead remake a try on the Switch 2. It's definitely worth your money. I think it's like $15 on sale now. So definitely give it a try. And speaking of zombie games, well, this isn't exactly a zombie game. It was between this and Resident Evil Revelations 2. Resident Evil 5 is one of the best co-op games you can get on the Nintendo Switch 2, period. Resident Evil 5 is one of the best co-op games, period. And well, that's because it's pretty much everything you can get in a Resident Evil game with co-op gameplay. And on the Nintendo Switch 2, it's actually locked at a steady 60 FPS. I don't think the resolution was touched in the original Switch version because the aesthetic of Resident Evil games are very important, and Nintendo made sure of that. And with Resident Evil 5 on the Switch 2, as you can see, it looks perfect and it plays perfect. But I remember playing this game back in the day on the Xbox 360, and it always made quite an impression on me because of how great it looks. Now, it doesn't have much of a story, but in terms of co-op gameplay, this is a very deep game. There are several ways to share your items between each player. You can share your inventory by bringing it up like this. You can actually combine weapons with each other. You can combine combos. So if, say, I were to shoot this guy in the kneecap and then I give him, well, that'll do a one-shot kill. If you shoot him in the kneecap and then the other player jumps in, you can actually kind of chain your attacks to eventually make a haymaker. It's parts of the game like that that make it an absolute blast to play in co-op mode, and you need to play this game with a partner. You can't have an AI jumping around taking all your items like they do here. Hey, come here, stop taking all my items. But if you have an actual person, they can actually consider you and consider what you want. As you can see, they took it anyway, regardless of me saying no, because they're AI, they can't hear me. But yeah, Resident Evil 5, the best co-op game you could play on the Nintendo Switch 2, and with the bumped up FPS, it is actually one of the better Resident Evil games to play on this system. And number 13 has to be Sifu. I think this game also got an FPS upgrade thanks to the Switch 2's hardware, and it's one of the better action games available for the Switch right now. I think Sifu is actually one of the best action games, even considering action-adventure games like Shenmue and Yakuza. The fighting in this game seems to be completely choreographed and just natural with the world around you. There's nothing you can do that can seem unnatural or video game-ish in this world or setting. And in Sifu, you're set out to take revenge for your father, and you have to do so by fighting a legion of enemies. And these enemies will surround you, very similar to the free-flow combat you see in Batman Arkham titles. Sifu has some of the best choreography right next to those Arkham titles, and I feel like the free-flow combat in Sifu feels even better than that of Batman Arkham games. I wish Batman Arkham games had action similar to Sifu. You can't go wrong with Sifu, especially on the Switch 2. It receives such a great upgrade that playing this game over again feels like a brand new experience. But yeah, check Sifu out on the Switch 2. It can't be missed. And now this is a big jump from Tears of the Kingdom on the list, but number 14 has to be Breath of the Wild, Nintendo Switch 2 edition. I think that in terms of Nintendo Switch 2 editions, this is the best. The visuals, the FPS, the resolution, everything has been upgraded, modified, and tailored for the Switch 2. But better yet, Breath of the Wild is one of the best games on the Switch 2. So to have an upgrade this significant for a game this perfect and timeless as Breath of the Wild is something that cannot be ignored, and it just needed to be on this list. Of course, I like Breath of the Wild better than Tears of the Kingdom, that's no secret. But it's mainly because of the nostalgia behind this title. It's the first Switch game, it's the first open world Legend of Zelda game. There's a lot of firsts that this game has accomplished, and I feel like having such perfect gameplay makes this the first perfect Nintendo Switch 2 game. Now, why is it not number 20? Well, it's mostly because most of my list is alphabetical order, but also because there are more important games that will push Nintendo Switch 2 a lot further than Breath of the Wild. In terms of Switch 1, I think Breath of the Wild made its mark on that system and made such a huge milestone for Nintendo in general that the Switch 2 pretty much has no choice but to move on from Breath of the Wild and potentially try to get something even better, if it's even possible. Yeah, guys, if you haven't checked out Breath of the Wild already, I highly recommend checking out the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, obviously for the Switch 2. And number 15 is a game that so many people have been waiting for. They've mostly been waiting for it to be remastered, and that is Metroid Prime Remastered. And if you ask me, Metroid Prime Remastered was already perfect on the Switch 1. But after emulating it myself, I found that there were certain features of this game that could have actually been upgraded from the Switch 1 port. And the Switch 2 has shown that a hardware upgrade was very much necessary. Now, this game runs at a perfect and smooth FPS, and I believe that it is running at 60 FPS most of the time, but on the Switch 2, it's running at 60 FPS all of the time. There were certain locations with the Switch 1 that were more populated than others in terms of wildlife or even tessellation or grass details. But on the Switch 2, the game runs so buttery smooth that it just makes me want to beg Nintendo for a 120Hz upgrade. Please, Nintendo, find it in your hearts to make a 120Hz upgrade so we can actually test a 120 FPS game on the Switch 2 for the first time, and having it as Metroid Prime Remaster would be very much appropriate. But I absolutely cannot wait for Metroid Prime 4. I think Metroid Prime Remastered is incredibly impressive. Obviously, since you can actually play it like a real FPS shooter similar to Halo and Call of Duty, the bosses in Metroid Prime Remastered are a lot easier than they used to be. But I highly recommend Metroid Prime Remastered because this is the best version of the game, obviously. And on the Switch 2, the hardware upgrade shows that there's actually room for improvement. And number 16 is BioShock. This is one of the first-person shooters that really made a lasting impression on me, mainly because the storyline took me by surprise. I find that I resonate with games a lot more when they have a storyline similar to BioShock. Now, a lot of other games followed suit, like Batman Arkham City, with its narrating kind of storytelling in the background, because BioShock takes a very unique stance in terms of storyline. I feel, along with good action, especially with a first-person shooter, you need a great story, and BioShock seems to be one of the only few first-person shooters that actually have just as good action as it does storytelling. And for me, this game is a 10 out of 10, and it's a highly recommend to anybody who's into first-person shooter games. And on the Switch 2, the FPS is actually so much better that the first-person shooter aspect is very playable compared to the Switch 1 version. So yeah, highly recommend BioShock Remastered. And number 17 is none other than Astral Chain. This was one of the first exclusives for the Nintendo Switch 1, and in my opinion, one of the best action games on the system as well. But going into the Nintendo Switch 2 version, this game enters perfect territory. It not only feels good like the original Switch 1 port, but it actually looks so much better in handheld mode. I know that this game has been upgraded since, but the improvements that the developers made over the course of the last few years have shown. And with the Switch 2 version, it actually takes full advantage of all those upgrades provided by the developers. And the action in Astral Chain, considering it's a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive, I didn't expect too much, but after hearing that Platinum Games was actually working on this, it shows that the developers of Bayonetta, Nier Automata, and even Devil May Cry have worked on this game. With all of the incredible acrobatic combos they can pull off, along with your Legion, this game proves to be one of the best action-adventure games. And appropriate to the genre, this game actually has a pretty good traversal system as well. You can use your Legion to solve mysteries. You actually have somewhat of a detective mode in this game, which is pretty crazy, and there's a lot to unpack here. It's quite overwhelming, to be fair, but Astral Chain, if you give it your time, will actually be one of the better action-adventure games that you've played in a very long time. And number 18 is Bright Memory. This is one of the games that I saw early on that didn't exactly look like the best quality, but this was actually made by one person. Now, this game was first introduced to me through Steam, and recently it was ported to the Nintendo Switch 1. Now, I didn't think that the Nintendo Switch can actually support a game that looks and plays this good. But Bright Memory is one of the better action-adventure first-person shooters that you can play out there right now. And considering it was only made by one person, this thing is a miracle. And on the Nintendo Switch 2, it actually plays a lot better than it did on the Switch 1. It's actually locked at 60 FPS for the most part. I know that the original port had 30 FPS, which is okay, but playing Bright Memory on the Switch 2 at 60 FPS is just so appropriate to the game and franchise. It feels like I'm back home playing this on my PC or my PC handheld. This game was not even this smooth on my PC handheld, so considering that, I think that Bright Memory on the Switch 2 is one of the most impressive ports as of late. And number 19 needs to be Borderlands 2. Not only is this one of the best first-person shooters, but it's one of the best cooperative games you can play online and locally. Now, yes, you can play Borderlands 2 locally on the Nintendo Switch 2 version, but on something like the Steam version, you actually don't have the luxury of playing this in couch co-op. Now, not only that, but this game actually runs at 60 FPS in handheld mode. Usually it's locked at 30 FPS, but in docked and handheld, Borderlands 2 runs better than it did on the original Switch. Now, I find that to be not only the best upgrade from a Switch 1 port, but it's a good upgrade for one of the best ports of such a culturally influencing game like Borderlands 2. This game is quite a milestone for video games in general, and playing it on the Switch 2, which by the way is a milestone on its own, is like a full circle moment. And with the Switch 2 having the best version, with insanely smooth gameplay, and the luxury of playing a game like this in co-op mode, I feel like Borderlands 2 on the Switch 2 will be a truly timeless video game. Now, I can already hear the comment section. Oh, number one should be this, number one should be that. Well, my number one is a game that is near and dear to me. It's produced by Capcom, and it's kind of an unorthodox game, but honestly, Katamari Damacy Reroll is pretty much better than any other game on this list. I know you're waiting for me to go to the actual number one, but this is honestly my number one. I'm just kidding. For my true #1 game on the Nintendo Switch 2, of course, it's Cyberpunk 2077. Not only is Cyberpunk 2077 one of the best first-person shooter games with one of the best narratives made by CD Projekt Red, the makers of Witcher 3, but on the Nintendo Switch 2, Cyberpunk 2077 is nothing short of a modern miracle port. In quality mode, the game is very sharp, and it looks almost as good as something like a mainline console like a PlayStation 5. I feel like Cyberpunk 2077 on the Switch 2 has made a lot of doubters believe in the Switch 2, mainly because the game runs so smooth. And when I switch it into performance mode, the game is somehow even smoother. It runs at a steady 40 FPS for the most part. I even played Phantom Liberty, and that gameplay was pretty smooth, considering this game couldn't even run on modern consoles at the time of its release. The fact that it's running on a Nintendo Switch 2 on day one of the system's release is something to be noted. It seems like Nintendo has really shown us exactly what the Switch 2 is capable of, and with something as impressive as Cyberpunk 2077. Its visuals are pretty much the best in the industry, made by one of the best developers in the industry. And so far, I've only experienced one crash, and that's after playing this game for a full 3 hours. Now, of course, Cyberpunk still has some glitches here and there. That's kind of the hallmark of Cyberpunk 2077, similar to something like Skyrim, and that has all been brought over to the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. This game shows that ports are still very important, especially when it comes to hybrid consoles. It shows off what the console can do for the future and for now, and since we're starting with this game, I can't imagine how much better these ports are going to get, if they somehow get even better than this. Yeah guys, let me know what your top 20 games are for the Nintendo Switch 2. Do you have any favorite games for this hybrid console, or are you just waiting for the next first-party game to release for this system? I personally think there is enough first-party and third-party support for the Switch 2 to justify buying it even a month after its release, and especially with games like Cyberpunk 2077. I mean, just look at it. It actually has all the features of the original game, and it's in the palm of your hands. This game almost lasts 3 hours on the go. Considering what kind of game it is, that's incredibly impressive, even for something like a PC handheld. Yeah guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have a good one. Later.